Good evening. You can tell it's a good crowd here. All the smiles, lots of positive energy. We're surrounded by these wonderful images, creatures that we all love and we're interested in protecting. And I'm excited to be here because this year I'm celebrating 50 years since I dropped an anchor for the first time in the Galapagos Islands, sailed a small boat from Miami through the Caribbean, through the canal, spent 2 months sailing around the Galapagos as a deckhand, cook, a little bit of navigating. And I was working on my first undergraduate paper called The Nearshore Fishes of the Galapagos Islands for the University of West Florida. The reason I was doing that paper is I was flunking organic chemistry, and a very fortuitous thing happened. I had sailed with a captain through the Caribbean on a 52-foot ferrocement catch a couple of years before. That was 1973. And in 75, I'm struggling to get through organic chemistry. I'm dyslexic. I have other problems as well, but dyslexia and organic chemistry just don't go well together. And a telex arrived at the University of West Florida Department of Biology, and the dean received the telex. Attention, please see that Jack Grove gets this telex. I'm sailing my 52-foot boat to the Galapagos, and I want him to go along. The dean received the telex. I was called to the dean's office. I thought I was going to be told, Jack, you don't have what it takes, man. You'll never be a marine biologist. You flunked organic once. You're going to flunk it again. That's what. So I go into his office. I don't remember his name anymore. And I was very nervous. And he held up the telex. And he read it to me. And he said, you can sit down if you want. And I did. And a few months later, sailed. And so this evening, I'm going to share with you my love for the Galapagos Archipelago, an explanation for why it is a World Heritage Site, and why it is in peril like the rest of the world. And I mean that seriously. We are at a critical point in the evolution of life on this planet. And I feel so fortunate that for the past 70, well, not 73, that's how old I am. I didn't start in year one, but I left Pennsylvania when I was 17 years old, flew to drove my Volkswagen bus to Key West, sold it, got a plane ticket to Grand Cayman, worked as a laborer on the turtle farm, and I thought, wow, this is really cool. It's December. There are butterflies, a coral reef. It's warm and I don't have to shovel snow. I like the tropics a lot. And I spent the rest of my career there, and I've traveled around the world. I'm going to share some of the adventures with you this evening and share a little bit of science and see if I can get my new remote control to work. First of all, I want to encourage you to look at the old working draft of the first edition of the book. It was published by Stanford in 1997. And before it was published, I started work on the second edition. And let it be known that I did not have the expertise, the qualifications, the academic background, or the credentials necessary to compile a book of that nature. And you better believe there were some ichthyologists who had no hesitation to tell me that. And I don't know if anyone has ever said to you in writing or otherwise, you don't have what it takes. you can't do this. Here are the reasons. And it was in writing. And boy, did that put fuel on my fire. And so the book was published in '97, and I've continued my research since then. I've been very fortunate to have some incredible scientists and naturalists with whom I've collaborated, but those who have passed on, like Charles Darwin, who collected the first 15 species of fish in the Galapagos in 1835. Of course, they were all new to science. And more recently, there are several ichthyologists that I've been working with, and I make no pretense of being a professional ichthyologist. My degree is in marine biology. I consider myself a professional naturalist. I have an interest in all living things and the life sciences. And this evening, we're going to go from this foggy, blurred image of the College of the Florida Keys, which was Florida Keys Community College in 1972. And the reason the image is blurred is so is my recollection of those first 2 years. We won't go into the rationale, but I wasn't a very good student. But boy, did I like the marine biology stuff. I did get through general chemistry. You know, I struggled to get through it, but I loved the keys. And when I had already spent a number of months on Grand Cayman, I knew how to sail, and I loved diving, and I was certified under the ice, not thick ice, but ice around a quarry in Pennsylvania, in Myerstown Quarry, when I was 16. And so I've been diving ever since. So the Keys suited me very well. However, once I got to Galapagos, things really changed. Fish became my primary focus. I met the owners of a dive boat. It was the first dive operation in the Galapagos. By the time I got the job and I arrived in the islands in 1997, the dive boat had been sold, and the owner had bought the first large tourist vessel, capacity for 100 passengers. The national park would only allow 90. The ship was called the Motonave Bucanero. So I lived on a ship called the Buccaneer, and on another occasion I'll sing our theme song, which went, "We all live on the Buccaneer." And the lyrics are a lot of fun. But another time when we go to that party that's already been announced. So through the course of this presentation, I'm going to be identifying some of the fish. I'll give you names and so forth, but names are important. However, sometimes you get too caught up in the names and you forget about the beauty, the ecology, the behavior. And I'm going to focus a little bit more on all that good stuff, but you're going to hear some names, including scientific nomenclature. And I know that most of you here have a good understanding of how we end up with a genus and a species, but I'm going to review it anyway. We'll do it quickly. But this is a list of the people that I wanted to credit, those of you here in this room, and perhaps, since this is being recorded, and I have colleagues who hopefully are tuned in at the Charles Darwin Research Station in Galapagos, in Panama, where I'm doing a project at the Museum of Biodiversity, and Canadian Adventure Charters in Newfoundland. So there are people tuned in from around the world, and you'll notice especially Carlos and Alison Estape, who have been world-class leaders here, excellent photographers. And if you aren't envious of the two of them, then you don't know what they are doing. And and that's another story because they're going around the world taking amazing photographs, putting them up on Facebook. And I am greatly indebted to Carlos and Allison and their team, including most of the people on this list, who partnered with the East Pacific Corridor Alliance Foundation last year. We went to the Galapagos and collected specimens and got photographs. And in addition to the photographers that you saw on that list, I need to recognize the two real ichthyologists. They're both professionals in the science and study of fishes. Benjamin Victor probably knows more about the fish of the Caribbean and the Eastern Tropical Pacific than anybody in the world, especially when it comes to their DNA. Douglas Long is a specialist on deep water fishes and those many species that never see the light of day. And thanks to the two of them, the new book will have much more credibility than the first one. And I am not shy about promoting the book because it's going to be free. And I am so pleased and proud to say that because the first book that Stanford University Press published in '97, 7,500 copies. I was supposed to get some royalties. I never saw any cash. It cost me a fortune and years of my time, but you don't do a book of that nature or this nature, the new book, because of money. You do it because you recognize that we cannot protect life on this planet or in the ocean if we don't know what's there. And that's why I'm so happy, so pleased with what's happening with REEF to see the growth of the organization. By the way, Paul was a good friend of mine. He had started his first book on the Galapagos fishes after I had started mine. And I knew the ichthyologists that he was working with, and there was a little bit of competition early on. Admit it, it's nice in the nicest possible way. But Paul's book came out first, and I got a signed copy. And you know what he wrote in front of my copy was, "Jack, I couldn't wait any longer, and mine came out first." Now, I'm going to show you something here because it'll kind of make you laugh a little bit. And by the way, I'm showing it to you because I'd like it if you took a look at the book. This is the working draft. So when this came out in '97, guess who was one of the first people that I wanted to give a copy to? Mainly because what I wanted to write. In the nicest possible way. "Dear Paul, yours might have been first, but mine is bigger." So anyway, here's the way this is going to work. I'm happy to have a dialogue. I'm a professional at this. I like a little bit of heckling, but we do have an audience out there in cyberspace. So in order to include them, if you have a question, I'm happy to repeat it, or we can wait till the end and we'll actually pass a microphone around. So this is the old book. Special recognition to Bob Lavenberg, the first ichthyologist who really said, "Jack, you can do this. I'll help you." Oh, thank you, Robert Lavenberg. So I'm forever indebted because without his recognition, I couldn't have begun to do it. I'm just a country boy from Pennsylvania who likes fish and saw for the first time when I was 7 or 8 years old, I saw a fish eat a bird. And when I saw that happen, I was in a canoe fishing with a hand line and catching little bluegills, and my dad was casting in the Susquehanna for smallmouth bass, and he stopped, he brought his line, and he said, get your worm in the boat." What's going on here? You know how when you try to think back to when you were that small, you remember stuff, but you're not sure the details. Well, what I remember was Dad said, "Shh," and we watched, as a female mallard with several ducklings following her was moving along the riverbank right where my dad was casting. And so it's still quiet and you're watching the mallards and it's beautiful. And the female, and all of a sudden the water exploded and a smallmouth bass and a little duckling went up in the air and the duckling was gone. The mallards, took off. The ducklings followed. And I thought my dad was a god. How did he know that was happening? And so there was a great deal he said. And he said, I never saw that before. My father never saw something before. Wow, this must be really significant. So you know what I thought of when I was driving a Zodiac in the Seychelles Islands looking for giant black trevally, Jack trevally, chasing seabirds because David Attenborough showed it on the Blue Planet. And the fish are this big, and the seabirds have a wingspan of 3 feet or so, and they're sooty terns. And I saw it. I was guiding in a Zodiac, and we were looking for, wow, how many fish are there in the world that have been known to eat birds? There are 8, as far as I know. And you see, that is a plug for my next talk here. Okay, so this is on record. Where the land, the sea, where fish eat birds, and they're not all. I just made up that title. That's okay. So what are we going to do? All right. So that's the introduction. I've been told that I have to be on time. So now I'm going to go a little faster. I'm going to tell you first what I'm going to tell you. And I'm going to tell you, and at the end, I hope to have time to tell you what I told you. So, and we're going to have fun as we do this, and we're going to touch on some potentially, it's not controversial here. Everybody in this room knows that climate is changing. What I'm going to tell you is how climate changing is impacting the Galapagos, and especially the Eastern Tropical Pacific, and I'm going to explain in some detail who cares that a damselfish in the Galapagos went extinct because of climate change. That happens, good. And I'm going to tell you more about why that's so important. Now we're going to talk about ENSO, and how am I going to cover all of this in the next 30 minutes, 25 minutes. We're going to think global. No, we're going to act local. We're all local, so we can do that, and we're going to consider life in the Keys briefly. We know that our satellite technology is making amazing advances for us with ocean sciences. What we can now understand that's going on in the ocean that we wouldn't have understood in 1972 when I graduated from the college. However, if we had had this satellite image in 1972, all of this green stuff wouldn't be there. The changes in our marine ecosystem are dramatic, but they are not unique. And sadly, we're dealing with problems of this nature globally. And what are we going to do to stop it? I don't have an answer. What can we do to help avert absolute ecological catastrophe? We can set aside more marine protected areas globally, and we can enforce them and protect them and recognize that if we don't have small areas of the planet that are protected, we're screwed. Now, okay, this should work. This video was shot by Carlos and Allison. This is the western coast of Fernandina Island. It was taken last year. Fernandina is the westernmost island in the Galapagos. There are 14 major islands, 52 named isles and islets in the archipelago. They are owned by Ecuador, they encompass 3,043 square miles of land. The highest elevation is one of the 5 coalescing volcanoes on the island of Isabela, which is the largest island. It's 75 miles long, north by south. This island, the westernmost island of Fernandina, on its western slopes, right here, within 1 mile of the shore, it goes down to nearly 10,000 feet. That's a vertical slope. Now consider what's happening in the ocean around this archipelago. So this is real footage shot last year. I had the privilege of seeing a number of volcanoes, including at this same spot at Cape Douglas, Fernandina. Now, since I'm promoting my next talk, I thought I'd better say a few things about birds, but you know, seabirds are directly dependent on the fish community. So if you love fish, you need to know something about their predatory association. There are 3 species of boobies in the Galapagos. There are 4 here, plus the northern gannet. The redfoot is one of them. This is the bluefoot. Appropriately, all 3 of those species are considered plunge divers. So under the sea, it speeds over 30 miles an hour. They feed on the way down. They use their wings as well. And then they'll also pick up fish on the way north, out, not north. Marine iguanas are part of the marine ecosystem as well. They do not eat fish, but they are the only iguana that can hold its breath underwater and feed. In contrast to our introduced green iguana, which, by the way, everyone here, I don't see any visitors from far away and up north, but if you are a snowbird, welcome. We're delighted to have you here. And we hope you come back every winter because we need you here in the Keys. But our iguanas here can dive, swim underwater, but they do not feed underwater. The marine iguana is dependent entirely on this green seagrass called ulva. They were greatly impacted by the El Nino of 1982-83. My childhood involves fish from an early point. This is the vessel that we sailed to Galapagos. That is my first sight of Fernandina volcano. By the way, you saw all those acknowledgments at the beginning for people who took photographs. I'm indebted to them. When you see a photo that's not sharply focused, it was taken with film and reproduced. And it was taken by a much older photographer whose name I won't mention. But that was, this vessel took me to the island for the first time. It's a very special place in my heart. If I were to buy a sailboat, that I was going to, well, I'm not going to buy a sailboat anyway. But okay, so in those days, I had hair, and I did know how to use a sextant. For those of you who are not familiar with that instrument, it's a GPS, but it just looks different. And I bought it used for $125, and it worked pretty well. Texas Instruments, and it worked fine until I forgot it one day on the dock, and it melted. Anyway, having a little bit of knowledge about sailing and navigation was very helpful. This is a ship that I lived on for 7 years. And as I'm celebrating 50 years, 7 years, I lived on the same ship. I did the same two itineraries 3 times every 8 days. I led 3 groups of 90 passengers for 7 years. And so I calculated how many snorkelers I've left. I said, left. How many I did? that number was 0. We always said we leave no snorkelers behind, but somewhere around 50,000 snorkelers that I have taken, and divers through the island. My cabin was on the starboard side. I have put in a marine lab. I converted it it was a toilet, and it wasn't being used, so I convinced the owners to let me put in an aquarium, salt water. So now this is really cool. How are we going to talk about the Galapagos if we don't know about the geology? Some of you have seen and understand this phenomenon of plate tectonics. What I would like you to look at is these years, pay particular attention to the connection between the Americas. This phenomenon of continental drift is very important to understand when we discuss the evolution of life on land, things like when the reptiles and the mammals were separated, but also look what's happening here in the ocean. This is an open sea. The Tethys Sea flows right through there. We're at 90 million years ago, and it's still open. That means that the current is flowing through from one side of the Americas to the other. And look what's happening as we get closer to the contemporary time. Somewhere around 3 million years ago, this connection took place. It provided a connection between the two great continents of North America and South America, but it also divided the ocean. So from our perspective this evening, what we're focused on is what happened. And how are they using DNA today to look at DNA of fish on either side, knowing that they were once interbreeding, and can tell. I can't tell. I do know what DNA is. Thank God I'm working with competent scientists who understand how to do barcodes and mitochondrial DNA versus eDNA. You know, you can get DNA from the water now. So there's some awesome stuff. And what is that? Holy cow. No. Oh, okay. What do I do? Oh, okay. Oh, boy. Sorry about that, man. Oh. Okay, I hope everyone out there in cyberspace is also having a good laugh, and thank God that wasn't something else. Who knows? Okay, so now a couple of questions. I'm going to see how astute my audience is here. You can just speak out. All right, if that is the Eastern Tropical Pacific, what is this area? Got it. Okay, thank you very much. Now, what is the other name for that area? All right, so there's Eastern Tropical Pacific. Galapagos is somewhere in here. Western Tropical Atlantic. Is the other name Caribbean? Or is it Caribbean? When somebody asks me that question, I say, I don't care. It's the Western Tropical Atlantic. And that's what I want you to remember, because that's why the region that we are looking at, especially the eastern side of the Pacific Ocean. And so I better get cracking or we'll never get done. Now, I just skipped over that. It's Panama, the isthmus that changed the world. Now you understand why it changed the world, because the rapacious mammals in North America moved to South America and they ate all the marsupials. And it divided the ocean so that the fish of the Western Tropical Atlantic were separated from those from the Eastern Tropical Pacific. And isn't that exciting? Now, this is the ridge that separates two tectonic plates. I know we don't have time to go into plate tectonics and continental drift, but we did tell you about Pangaea and the split up of the continents. Well, the reason they split up is because there are tectonic plates. There are two kinds of them. There's either an ocean on top of the plate or a continent. The oceanic plates are heavier than the continental plates. So when an oceanic plate collides with a continental plate, it's subducted. You get a trench. It gets hot as hell when that plate is sliding beneath the continent, and it causes boiling and does things like forms the Andes. Then there are the accretion centers, like the East Pacific Rise, where molten materials coming out of the seafloor, moving the tectonic plates, Cocos and Nazca plate and the Pacific plate away. And isn't it exciting that the Galapagos is right at the intersection right here of three plates? Nazca, Cocos, Pacific has an awesome name called the Nazco-Pac Triple Junction. Huh? Now, if I was a songwriter, wouldn't that make a great song? Okay, now, you know, this is the mid-Atlantic ridge, and this is the East Pacific Rise. They look very much alike, don't they? What's the difference? There is no geological difference. The difference is that there was different money that paid for this research. Woods Hole named this, Scripps Institute named that, and it's the same phenomenon. So the reason that it matters is that this ridge in the East Pacific is responsible for the formation of the Galapagos. Oh, the barrier that I showed, Darwin discovered that when he sailed across the Pacific in the Beagle, and he said, oh man, I've been seasick for weeks getting from Galapagos to the Marquesas, and what an incredible barrier this is, this open ocean. This is a barrier to zoogeographic. I noticed barrier reefs, and I thought, gee, barrier, I can mention that because zoogeography, the distribution of life on land or in the sea, in the case of marine zoogeography, well, the East Pacific barrier separates the life in the West Pacific from the life in the East Pacific. Therefore, it's an oceanic barrier. And a fish like this, I bet you don't see them on the coral reef, what's left of it out here in the Florida Keys, do you? That's because this fish has never gone through the Panama Canal, and it's not found in the Atlantic Ocean. It's a Moorish idol, one of my favorite fish. They are resident in the Galapagos, but not extremely common. One of about 600 species. Ocean circulation. I'm not very good with the computer, but I was so proud of myself when I created that. I did that years ago, and I just can't delete the slide. You know, I'm sure there's about, okay, so why is this significant? Okay, let's go to, here's the coast of Ecuador. Surface current goes that way. It forms a gyre to the right in the north, to the left in the south. Clockwise in the north, counterclockwise in the south. And what happens during an El Nino? It's complicated, but it's simple. What happens? Trade winds, northeast, southwest, stop blowing. Westerly set up. There's a slosh of water. Sea level rises in the East Pacific. That water is hot. It's not productive. It causes the plankton that normally feeds the anchovies and keeps the water cold in the East Pacific deep. The thermocline is depressed greatly. What happens when that takes place? We'll get to that in a moment. This is the region showing you the depths. I'd like you to look closely. Look at these depth ranges. There's the green 5,000 meters. There's some deep trench areas here, and you'll see that in the archipelago itself, we don't have anything deeper than about 2,000 meters right at the edge. That's where that lava was flowing into the sea. And this is the Galapagos platform right here. Two islands, Wolf and Darwin, arise from the bottom of the depths of the Pacific Ocean. They do not come up from the Galapagos platform, making their habitat somewhat unique. That's where everybody wants to go to see the hammerheads, which are being exploited by the Chinese fishing fleet. And if I don't get to it, you won't. Yeah, here we are. Yes. I want you to just look. You don't have to read all of this. What it says is, look at this concentration of hundreds, or is it thousands, hundreds, fleet of 300 Chinese fishing fleets. This is the edge of the exclusive economic zone. These Chinese fishing fleets in the year 2020 followed the migration of the squid, but they knew they shouldn't get on the inside or they would be arrested when they get caught. This industrial fishing in the Eastern Tropical Pacific is of serious concern. It's a concern out here in the Atlantic as well, but men are hammering the Eastern Tropical Pacific in a big way. Again, emphasizing the importance of the use of satellites. Marine protected areas, I just skipped over that. A very small percentage of the world's ocean is protected. A smaller still percentage is special protected areas. You're familiar with them out here. We need more of both, and Galapagos should be one of them. As far as the history of ichthyological collection, their most recent study showed 683 species in the Galapagos, and that's the essence of the new book. Just this, well, since we're all more or less fish experts here, I will just remind you a couple of things. The genus is always capitalized. The species is always lowercase. If the, I won't go it. Yes, I will. I'll just tell you. If the author's names are in parentheses, it means that the author described the species in a different genus. And as time passed, the taxonomist changed it. So I just wanted to give you one example using the angelfish, this species not being found in the Caribbean, but the kingdom, following class, and order and family are all the same, or all of the angelfish in the worldwide are in that genus. That's not true. There are angelfish in different genera, but they're all part of the same family. This is the example of the white-banded angelfish found only in the Eastern Tropical Pacific. It is endemic to the region we define so geographically, and it includes the Galapagos. So we were faced with the question of, since the new book will include the deep water fishes to 10,000 feet based on submersible images from submersibles and ROVs, underwater vehicles. How do you divide the book up so that it's accessible to the general public as well as the ichthyological community? And what we arrived at is a zonation following traditional oceanographic zonation based on depth. Epipelagic, just we'll review the pelagic realm and give you an understanding of our application of these donations to have a legitimate way to divide up fish for the new book. And these are all things that you're familiar with. Just as a reminder, the Hidal zone is deeper than Mount Everest is high. And the fish that live there are blind or, basically no vision. They have other sensory apparatus that's important. So that is the pelagic zone that's referred to as bathypelagic, the deep water area. This is a pretty cool video clip showing you, by the way, for the fishermen here, just hold on to your seats because it makes you salivate. There are two species of mahi-mahi globally. They're both here. They're both in the Galapagos. And what I'm showing this video here is not to encourage you to want to go out and catch dolphin fish or mahi-mahi. I want you to look at the flying fish. Look how they propel themselves. Notice the ventral aspect of the tail. When they go airborne, they don't flap their pectoral fins, they glide. They have musculature On the anterior aspect of the pectoral fins, is all they can do is this. And then they wiggle their tail really fast, and that propels them into the air. And by the way, you now know what an order is, kingdom, following, class, order. The order in which the flying fish, look at the tail, look at the propulsion. The ventral part of the tail propels it. It's longer than the top part. The ventral lobe of the caudal fin is elongated. Huh? See, I do know these fancy terms. So, two other families of fish have the same characteristic, and they're in the same order. Guess what they are? I'll tell you. Half beaks and needlefish. And no, see, now it's common stuff that birds eat fish. That's not a big deal. But what is a big deal is that the flying fish are preyed upon from below and from above. And did you know frigate birds cannot get wet? Frigate birds do not sit on, if they get wet, they have to shake. And if you're out in the boat and you see a heavy thunderstorm and the frigate birds cannot get out of the way, they have to shake it off. If it rains too hard, they fall out of the sky. They're voracious piscivores. So, moving on to the next zone, mesopelagic. Those are the fish that migrate phototactically every day. They come up when the sun goes down. When the sun comes up, the fish migrate down. This is a phenomenon. Every 24 hours, that phototactic migration takes place. If you're reading this, the part that really gets your attention here is this. As such, carbon can be transported. Carbon can be transported and stored away even deeper into the ocean as it sinks. As such, carbon can be transported and stored away in the depths for centuries, sequestering it from the atmosphere, all thanks to the small migration of mesopelagic fish. By the way, whales do the same thing. When they dive, they eat the plankton, the product, the biodiversity. In deeper water, they come up to the surface, they defecate, and they are recycling nutrients and carbon. So in this deep zone, you have some families. Thank goodness I've got a deep sea biologist involved in this book. I never even heard of whale fishes. And there's more than one group of whale fishes. This one happens to be the flabby whale fish. I thought, why are they, well, now you know why they call it, they look flabby, and the female gets much flabbier than the male. For what, maybe I shouldn't say that, but, and the chimeras, again, another species exclusively found in the great depths of our sea. Look at this, these were taken by the Schmidt Ocean Institute. They're doing incredible work. And the images are available on YouTube. You can go on. I have a tremendous admiration for Wendy and Eric Schmidt. And look at the depth here, 3,164 meters. This photograph was taken. Imagine what Darwin would have thought. Did you know Darwin never snorkeled? The first person in the Galapagos to look around under the water was William Beebe. I'm doing a lecture in November at the Museum of the Diving Museum about William Beebe and his research in the depths of the Galapagos. What size? They get pretty big, and there's quite a variety of them. So I am getting tight on time, so I'm going to go even faster. Here, the important thing is 59 different species of cartilaginous fishes in the Galapagos: sharks, rays, chimeras, and we have added all these families to the book, to the new book. As I said, I didn't even know the names. This is, again, this ray was photographed at 2,794 meters. Now, if you go to Galapagos, you'll see the reef white tip. It's a common shallow water species. I took this picture. You'll notice it is out of focus. It's gotten more out of focus over the decades when reproducing it. But I was on a Cousteau trip to the Galapagos. We were trying to document illegal fishing. Just a reminder, not all sharks bear live young. This is the first egg case of the Galapagos horned shark ever recorded. We then, with our book, are dividing the book into the deep water fishes, the elasmobranchs, and the teleostean fishes. So those are the three categories that we're using. And so this is the region you recognize all of these groups without me telling you. All three of those jacks are found in the Caribbean. You'll recognize them. Most of the species in the Galapagos are found only in the eastern tropical Pacific. And you'll notice these pictures were taken by Allison and Carlos and the team because they are in sharp focus. And I can't wait to, I'm just starting with the color plates, and I'm using their photos. This is also the pelagic trigger taken by the Estape team. The cool thing about the expedition that they participated in last year with the EPCA is we had a permit from the Darwin station. They partnered with us. They were photographing these tiny little benthocryptic or cryptobenthic fishes, blennies, gobies, snail darters. No, not snail darters. Very small fish that hide in the sand. And then they photographed them, and they were allowed to collect a specimen or two. We now have those specimens. I will be bringing them back in May to a lab in California to do the DNA work. So the book will be unique in that respect. And again, I'm pumping this book up, but this is a contribution to science. This is not like making money with it. Therefore, I hope you understand the legitimacy of my propaganda. Now, El Nino, this is the damselfish that disappeared. I was the last one to photograph it in 1982, and it disappeared because of the El Nino. We had flooding, heavy rain in places where nobody had seen rain in Galapagos. And it was so heavy, we had these massive floods on a number of the islands. Recently, we published a paper providing empirical data to show that the damselfish disappeared because of the warm water event. Check out this rusty damselfish. This is the range in the Galapagos. Not coincidentally, that is the coldest area with the most productive ocean environment, and therefore it is also the main habitat for the Galapagos penguin, one of the smallest penguins in the world. Notice that this bird is about to eat those fish, which are silversides in the family Athyrinidae. Notice the age of that mask. I've tried to find, she would be in her 60s now, and I've tried to find her just out of curiosity and to hey, I'm still alive. Do you remember your Galapagos trip? I was 24, by the way. And flightless cormorant also is restricted pretty much in its breeding range to the western part of the archipelago. So just a quick look at some of the families that are found in the Galapagos, a little bit of an idea of which ones are there, why they're so special, and some unique things like this is the first record of Chaetodon kleini in the Galapagos. And when I published the record without the photograph, there was one ichthyologist who was a high-ranking, super-duper scientist who said, well, how do we know that Jack Grove took that picture in the Galapagos and not in Tahiti or some Western Pacific place? It gave me great pleasure to send him this picture with Chaetodon, with John Randallia nigrorostris, found only in the Eastern Tropical Pacific. And I said, na, 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 na. So parrotfish, we've got 7 species in Galapagos. I'm always fascinated by the fact that most parrotfish have a pharyngeal mill that they grind up the coral that they consume. Last group of fishes, just to comment. Now I know this is out of sharpness, and you're saying Jack must have took that picture. But actually, I didn't take the picture, but I tried to find the specimen, but it turns out that they ate the fish. They ate the eel. It's the only record of the freshwater eel in the Galapagos. It was found during the El Nino event. An interesting story. So moray eels are in a separate family from this group. I see Slate didn't come tonight. I told him I was going to be talking about eels, and he's so Slate, that comment is for you if you're out there. But the morays are an interesting group, very complicated for classification, but noteworthy indeed. So in closing, if you don't remember a thing I've said tonight, try to remember the significance of this illustration. If you take all of the marine protected areas in the oceans of the world, put them together, you have this yellow quadrant. They're not all located off the southwest coast of Africa, however. If you take all of the special protected areas like we have out here, you all know where they are. If you take those areas, that's the red quadrant. That's the entire ocean. How can we have any hope of protecting the biodiversity of marine life on this planet if we don't have more protected areas? So with that, I'd like to close. I think we're probably too tight on time. Maybe I can take 2 questions or our remarks. Yeah.
Wow, that was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. Comments or questions?
How do we get your book?
How do we get your book?
You go online, and it's this new technology called open access. And to be honest, I've been discussing this with my co-authors. The book is going to be valuable. All of these pictures, the good pictures, will be in the new book. It's going to be a desirable thing to have a printed copy. We don't have plans to print it, and the way you get it is to go online and download it. Now, I still am not sure. Things like Carlos and Allison and their team, we've worked together with them to get the photographers to the Galapagos. So we have a deal that, we're not doing this to make money. So for now, our plan is that it's going to be totally free, downloadable. If we can work out a way to print it. By the way, I have been saying it will be published in 2025. Now that it is 2025, I am saying that my co-authors and I have discussed this, and it will be published within the next 12 months. So we're fighting a little bit, but things are moving ahead. And I think that is realistic. The last thing I might share with the public is that I mentioned at the beginning that I have no idea how to solve the problems that we are all facing about preserving biodiversity and preserving life on this planet. What do we do? How do we as individuals make a difference? I'm really reaching out to every possible avenue. I happen to be a man of faith, and I have friends in the faith community who don't really interact with scientists. And I have friends in the scientific community, excellent scientific minds, wonderful people, great friends. If I mention the God word, it's like they shut down. And so I'm trying to convince both the science and the faith community that, hey, don't try to convince the other community of anything. Just talk about the one thing that both communities agree upon, and that is we better take care of the biodiversity of life, or if you choose to call it God's creation, so what? Take care of it and stand on the same platform. And everybody in this room, there is a white elephant here. We recognize the division that is taking place in our country, and we can work together in this arena, if no other. We don't even have to say the P word. That stands for politics. You don't have to mention it. You just work together. You have friends who's a regular churchgoer